Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bonsert with a quick announcement. These last few weeks I noticed a sudden drop on subscribers. I didn't know the reason, but apparently YouTube uses a new kind of algorithm that makes channels lose subscribers through, I don't know. So please, if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And in case you have subscribed, please check if your subscription is still active. That was all.
Radio Retro Future.
Well, good day there, fellow Retro Futurist. I'm Bonsert of Radio Retro Future, and today I have another video for you. So, basically, this is a response to the discussion we had on Steampunk sibling rivalry with Goth, if it even existed in the first place. So, basically I want to have a little addendum on that, so to speak. What's the deal? So we had this discussion, and one of the panelists was Xerxes Hort of the New Jacobin Club. And he had one of the following statements to say during our conversation on there.
Yeah, the term is only as useful as the term goth, because goth will, if you search, if you're looking at that as a keyword for music, you'll get Sushi and the Banshees, but you'll also get Marilyn Manson. So it's about as useful as that term is as well, right? It's equally ineffective in terms of being an actual musical sound.
To summarize, according to him, the goth label doesn't mean anything anymore, because when you would search for goth music, you would get various artists with various forms of, basically music. And of course the same goes for steampunk music, but let me get started on a little history on my work. For those that don't know, I started blogging for Tupperware Steampunk something like 3 years ago, the end of 2012. Oh my god, that's almost 4 years. Well, what do you know? Anyway, one of the reasons I started with Tupperware Steampunk was to kind of find an answer to that very old question, what is steampunk? And basically 4 years later, I basically call it geek culture in the past. Rather vague, I know, but I have a reason for it. So when I actually describe it, and I'm not talking about definitions here, purely about the description, I basically describe it as a trichotomy of literature, the aesthetic, and its community. But this is purely a description of, for me, a verifiable reality. Never did I even get close to giving a objective definition for the term. And here is why. Steampunk. Pure steampunk does not exist. Steampunk is a very abstract concept. It's an idea based on passions, nostalgia, and personal feelings. You know, there are as many forms of steampunk as there are people that identify as steampunks. Really, that's what it comes down to. Talk to any veterans of the community, especially the makers and visual artists. They will tell you they were always doing steampunk before they even know what it was. I mean, we're talking about people who were making such art somewhere already in the 90s. The same goes for me. I always had a fascination with circuit boards, so I tap into that nostalgia. Hell, that style, or my style, is probably so unique that if I was better known or I made more stuff that get noticed, people would probably create a label for it like circuit punk or something. Wait, let me try to see if I can actually find that. Oh god, it exists. Okay. As I mentioned in an earlier video, the community is very inclusive when it comes to people, its music, tastes, of course retro-futuristic styles. But as a consequence, however, the meaning of the word steampunk got diluted to the point of becoming kind of a descriptor. You know, this story has steampunk because It is set in a Victorian-esque setting, and it has stuff like ray guns, or it has anachronistic elements or something. But I talked about this in depth on another video, the one about Steampunk. But what does that mean? Well, I quoted Montague Jacques Fromage before on this. Steampunk music does not exist, just the music that steampunks like. Steampunk music is basically the community of musicians and their fans. It's not a particular sound. I mean, you've got like metal, blues, chap hop, funk. That all it can be found. All that alternative styles can be found in the steampunk music scene. If a band or one of its members, I'm not calling any names, start antagonizing or alienating members of that community, there's a good chance they will not last long. The social aspect is very important. So when people don't like you personally, there's a good chance you will not get any more invites to conventions, or people just simply stop listening to you out of a kind of principle. Nearly everyone knows each other in this scene worldwide. You know, maybe there are some more isolated groups. Like I noticed there's a lot of Italian artists, but when I named some of them to some of the more to the musicians I know personally, no one knew who they were. So as for what steampunk is, it does not exist. That was basically a conclusion I drew a long time ago. There is no pure steampunk. So what does the label mean if that's the case? And also, I want to stress, this is not the fault of Hot Topic or other big name corporations or vendors that are trying to make a quick buck, like, you know, those Chinese and Indian sites that tag anything that's a little bit alternative with steampunk. No, that's not their fault. This is steampunk's fault. This is steampunk's fault for trying to include everything they like into their passion. You know, like people who want to call Jules Verne steampunk, even though he's science fiction, it's just 19th century science fiction. You know, H.G. Wells, and then you've got like old movies like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Wild Wild West. The thing with it is, they're not steampunk. In the way, they were not intended to be steampunk, is probably more accurate. They inspired early steampunk, though. That's why I really don't like when people do that, because they all try to reduce it to this one thing that it just isn't, and it kind of, you know, it's also kind of like people don't want to acknowledge that their ideas are not unique. That's the thing. Steampunk is not as unique as they think. They basically took an existing aesthetic and made it their own. But I'll make a different video on that. I think I already made a video on this, actually, by the way. So yeah, that is what steampunk is to me. It's a collection of sources, like books and movies, that inspire a retro-futuristic movement that we now call steampunk. It's a concept. It's an inspirational source. Nothing is steampunk because anything can be. Really, that's why I called my first blog Tupperware Steampunk. Why can't Tupperware be steampunk? I started out with that conclusion, and that conclusion hasn't changed in 4 years. Yeah, that's also the beauty of it. That's why I think all these sub-labels like Atompunk and Clockpunk are nonsense. Because anything can be steampunk. Really. It doesn't mean the word steampunk doesn't have a meaning, though. It's just people are using it wrong. When they're talking about particular items, the question is item X steampunk, for example, is to me a malformed question. Actually, the person is asking, may I enjoy this as a steampunk? And if another person replies with no, that person actually means, I don't like it, therefore it isn't steampunk. As if this person's taste can dictate what is and what isn't. Now, there, of course, are the wise guys, like, for example, this weekend I was with Radio Retro Future at the City Square of Enlightenment. Trust me, it sounds better in Dutch. And by accident, one of the people that got along with me took along my Pip-Boy 2000 prop of the Fallout series. that happens when you bring along the contents of your own living room to an event. Anyway, we were standing in the middle of a city, basically a shopping street, and people just walked by, and it was raining, so no one was really in the mood to stand by and watch what was going on. A lot of these folk, they don't know anything but soccer, so they had no idea what they were seeing anyway. And a few people come to us and ask them, what is this, and what are we doing, blah, 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 blah. A lot of the typical questions you can expect from people who've never seen steampunk before, because it isn't really that well known in the Netherlands yet. It's getting more mainstream here, but it isn't quite there yet. But events like City Square of Enlightenment do help, of course, especially because they're so public. Now, there was one or two people that came past our stand, and one of them noticed the Pip-Boy 2000 standing on one of the radios. And, he's like, oh, yeah, that doesn't belong there because that's Fallout and that's a different franchise. And they say, well, why? I mean, Fallout has a major impact on steampunk. And I think Fallout also contributed a lot to the popularity of steampunk as a genre as well. So, yeah, it does have a place there. It is a part of the source of inspiration. And, look at a lot of the costumes on, especially cons, anime cons and stuff like that, where you have steampunk Iron Man, steampunk Wonder Woman, steampunk this, steampunk that. Really, that's where the inspiration of steampunk comes from. Both history and current geek culture. Point is that steampunk is a very poor descriptor. Steampunk is what steampunk's like. We are way past the turning point, and we're way past the point of turning it into something concrete. Now, is that a problem? No, not really. As long as we are aware of this and realize no one is in the position to judge what is and what is not steampunk. At one point, I may make a video on how I identify something that's definitely not steampunk, which may sound a bit hypocritical at this point, but I'll make my case then. So don't worry about it. This is going somewhere. So please let me know what your opinion is in the comments. Of course, like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And please let me know if you are new to steampunk and this video has helped you in any way with the question what is and what is not steampunk. Because I do get that a lot. Like I said, is this item steampunk? Well, here you've got an opinion on it. So yeah, with that I bid you adieu, and as always, make it your way. Good night.